My name is Arthur Bennett, and I am 78 years old. I've walked many paths in my life, through the mud of British Army training, across the dusty timber of my small carpentry shop in Kent, and through the quiet grief of bearing the love of my life, Margaret. I've weathered winters of hardship and summers of fleeting joy, but nothing tested my sense of dignity and patience quite like the day of my grandson's wedding. His name is Oliver. I was there when he took his first shaky steps, when he graduated with distinction from university, and when he nervously introduced us to Charlotte Whitmore, the woman he chose to spend his life with. She was polished, articulate, the very embodiment of privilege, and she made sure everyone knew it. I had seen how she treated my daughter Claire, Oliver's mother, with a polite cruelty masked as charm, small cutting remarks, a smile hiding a sting, an almost surgical dismissal of everything that didn't shine as she deemed worthy. But I stayed quiet. We old men learn early that some battles are not ours to fight, at least not at first. Claire had raised Oliver on her own after her husband abandoned them when he was barely a toddler. She worked 3 jobs simultaneously, skipped meals, sacrificed her own health and happiness, all to ensure that Oliver had opportunities she never did. And when Oliver announced his engagement, he asked Claire to help with the wedding. Without hesitation, she cashed out an old savings bond she'd held since the 90s. She said, "It's his big day, Dad. I want it to be perfect." Her voice carried no resentment, only love, the kind that refuses to let circumstances dictate the limits of devotion. I wasn't thrilled. I'd seen Charlotte's demeanor, the cold perfection, the way she subtly belittled Claire, and yet Claire's heart was unwavering. I couldn't stop her. The day arrived like a painting come to life. The wedding venue was an old manor in Surrey, steeped in ivy and history, adorned with ivory roses that smelled faintly of nostalgia, a string quartet playing notes that hovered like whispered memories, waiters in crisp white gloves, moving as though part of a living tableau. Claire looked radiant in navy blue, greeting guests with that warm, effortless elegance she had always carried, a quiet defiance against the world's indifference. I watched Charlotte's mother arrive, her expression tight, her lips pressed in judgment. She barely acknowledged Claire. And then Charlotte entered, a vision of designer poise and icy beauty. The room collectively held its breath, but the moment her eyes fell on Claire, her smile vanished. She walked straight up to Claire and said, loud enough for every guest to hear, "Claire, I think it's best if you leave. This day isn't about you. I don't want your energy ruining anything." Time itself seemed to shiver. Claire froze, her lips parting as if to speak, searching for words that might right the world. She glanced at Oliver, the boy she had nurtured and protected for decades, and he did nothing. Not a word, not a gesture, nothing. He looked away, embarrassed, as if his mother's presence were an imperfection in his meticulously curated life. The silence that followed was thick, almost tangible. Guests shifted uncomfortably, whispers tiptoed between marble pillars, and yet Claire remained statuesque, her dignity unbroken. "I understand," she said softly and turned to walk away. I followed her out into the chilled air of the courtyard. We sat in her car for a few minutes, the engine ticking softly in the silence. She didn't cry. She didn't curse. She just stared out of the window, watching petals drift across the cobblestone. Then her voice, quiet but firm, broke the stillness. "I guess I raised him too well," she said. "I taught him to put others first, and now I'm no longer one of those others." I felt something awaken in me then. Not rage, but a crystal clarity that cut through decades of patience. "I'm going back in," I told her. She looked at me, confusion etched across her face. "Why?" she asked. "Because everything in there, the flowers, the food, the music, the wine, the whole charade, was paid for by you, Claire. They may have a family name, but they've been living off your generosity." I opened my phone, scrolling to the spreadsheet she had sent me weeks earlier. Every invoice, every deposit, every vendor's contact, all under her name, all under her card. I started with the venue manager. "This is Arthur Bennett, financial sponsor for the Whitmore Bennett wedding. Cancel the final payment. Yes, immediately." One by one, the pieces fell. I called the caterer. No more food, no more service until the account was settled. I called the champagne supplier, the florist, the string quartet, the photographer, even the honeymoon suite at the Cotswolds retreat. All canceled. The room, the event, the illusion, all held hostage by the truth that Claire had silently borne for years. I walked back into that grand hall slowly, deliberately, feeling the weight of every chandelier above me, the echo of every note from the quartet, the soft murmur of guests who sensed something monumental was about to unfold. Oliver noticed me first. His eyes widened in a mixture of shock and incredulity. "Granddad, what are you doing?" he asked, panic creeping into his voice. I approached him, calm but resolute, and looked him straight in the eyes. "I've made a few calls," I said, my voice steady. "Since your mother isn't welcome, neither is her money." Charlotte turned pale, her composure cracking. "What do you mean?" she demanded. "I mean," I said, gesturing around the hall, "your designer flowers will be leaving in 20 minutes. The band is packing up, dinner is off, the champagne is gone. Your honeymoon? Canceled. The entire event you've built your perfect picture around? No longer sponsored by the woman who made it possible." Oliver's face shifted from confusion to horror, then to a fleeting comprehension. He stammered something, but I raised a hand, quieting him. "You have spent your life pretending this world is built for you, Oliver. But real life," I said, my voice rising just enough to carry, "real life is paid for by those who show up when no one else does. And today your mother has shown up all her life. You've ignored her, humiliated her, and now you reap the consequence." Charlotte looked as if someone had drained the color from her eyes darting to guests who murmured and whispered, some shocked, some delighted, all aware that the rigid veneer of the society wedding had cracked irreparably. The silence she once wielded as power now worked against her. I turned to Claire, who had entered quietly behind me. She didn't speak. She just stood, elegant and steady, and the room seemed to inhale. I nodded to her and she smiled faintly. The smile of someone who knew that dignity, unlike grandeur, cannot be bought or destroyed. By the time I walked away, the guests were unsettled, some fleeing, some whispering furiously to cell phones. The grandeur of the day had vanished, leaving only truth, accountability, and a lesson long overdue. I drove Claire home afterward, the night sky above our heads calm and indifferent to the chaos we'd left behind. She rested her head against the window, quiet but alive, her dignity intact. Her lesson delivered without bitterness, without malice. I had never felt prouder, because at 78, after a lifetime of giving silently and enduring quietly, I realized something vital. Some battles are worth fighting. Some wrongs cannot be tolerated, no matter how socially convenient it might be to remain silent. I fought not for vengeance, not for spectacle, but for clarity, for justice, for the quiet triumph of a woman whose love had been boundless and unacknowledged for far too long. And in that hall, with flowers being whisked away and music silenced, I finally understood that sometimes even a gentleman must act decisively, even if it means shattering illusions to reveal the undeniable truth. Loyalty, sacrifice, and dignity will always outlast arrogance, entitlement, and cold politeness.